Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I'm going to give you another 20 hidden gem movies you've probably missed on Netflix. Now before jumping into this video, I want to tell you about Raid Shadow Legends. It's a mobile game that I've been playing, and I've actually partnered with them for this video in particular. Now I play a lot of games, mobile games, but even more on platforms like PS4, and Raid Shadow Legends is the closest thing to like a platformer that I've seen on mobile. The cool thing is you can actually play this cross-platform. You can play it on desktop and on mobile with the same account. And I happen to be very particular about RPGs in that I tend to only play the really good ones, and I felt like this was a really great one. It's not cartoonish at all, it doesn't feel like a mobile game, it feels like a real video game. It's got amazing graphics, some of the best I've seen on a mobile game ever. Tons of bosses, hundreds of champions that you can collect and customize. So I thought that aspect was really cool as well. So just go to the video description, click on the special links, and you'll get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey with Raid Shadow Legends. And my username is Darren Van Dam, so be sure to look for me if you do decide to play this free game yourself. Now, because I do so many videos about hidden gems, this one's actually going to include quite a few genres that you rarely hear me talk about. You'll know them when you see them if you're a longtime subscriber, but if you want additional recommendations, I'll put links to some other hidden gem videos in the description as well. But Life After Beth is sort of a romantic comedy about a girl turning into a zombie. Now this stars Aubrey Plaza, who I really like. I think she's really funny. I think she's got just a really great screen presence overall, so I really like her a lot. And I wanted to like this movie a lot more than I did. That said, it's still like a rom-com zombie movie, and it works. Like, it also didn't really seem to just sort of rehash things and go over things the same way. I was actually kind of surprised at the direction it went. It went in sort of one of those indie movie directions that a studio would really never let you get away with, which I appreciate. But then in this case, I felt like it didn't work 100%, which is the only reason it's back here at number 20. Keep in mind, when I say negative things about a movie, I'm basically highlighting the only downsides that I see and also explaining sort of why they're located so far back on the list. But if you want sort of a rom-com thing that doesn't follow the typical formula that has Aubrey Plaza turning into a zombie, Life After Beth is like the only way to go to get all of that stuff. G-Force is a family-friendly movie. It's a kids movie that I enjoyed watching with my son, so I had to recommend it. This one's about gerbils. Are they guinea pigs? I think they're guinea pigs because they're bigger. Anyway, they're spies and they have all this technology and stuff. Zach Galifianakis is like the ringleader of them, and he's a real person, but then all the guinea pigs are voiced by really talented people like Sam Rockwell, Penelope Cruz, Nicolas Cage, Jon Favreau, Steve Buscemi, Tracy Morgan, and they all bring their own kind of personal flair to it, and that made it fun for me as an adult to watch. Plus you get almost like this Michael Bay style crazy action movie with these guinea pigs, and it works. Like, it's fun. Now in no way, shape, or form is this a good movie, but it is a good watch, especially if you're looking for something to watch with your kids or nieces or nephews or whatever. Keep this one in your back pocket for one of those occasions. Perfect Bid is one of a few documentaries I have on this list about a guy who basically figured out how to beat The Price is Right. So even the most tepid fans of The Price is Right are gonna dig this. It's a lot of fun. He basically figured out that they repeat prizes and he could maintain a spreadsheet. Big math nerd, almost like I think he's on the spectrum, maybe, is what it seemed like. So he kept track of everything, and then he appeared on the show quite a few times, or at least was in the audience, and it makes for a very interesting story. Now, this one's way at the back, because it felt kind of thrown together in terms of documentaries. Like, they interviewed him, a few other people, they put in some footage. It does work, there's nothing wrong with it, but it really didn't have the gusto that some of the documentaries closer to the number 1 spot on this list have. I promise there's some blood and guts coming up on this list, but Mune, that's spelled M-U-N-E, this is a very interesting animated movie that, again, you can watch with the kids and you should be entertained because it's got these really beautiful visuals. I didn't feel like I was watching something that I had seen before, which is so often the case with a lot of these like high turnover kids movies. There's not a lot of meat on the bone for adults in these types of movies. Moon is different though. I found it to be interesting. The world it took place in was interesting. The physics of it and everything, and just sort of the like creatures and stuff that they came up with for this was interesting enough, and then the story is pretty good too. So it's a good movie to watch with the kids. Not a lot of bad stuff in it, but enough interesting things to sort of keep you engaged as well.
Can we start for 2-6?
No.
Honey, you there?
Dad?
Dad, what the?
What's this curve?
It's a pleasure. Nope.
Another rom-com on the list. I should have backloaded some of the blood and guts, but I love those movies better, so they're closer to #1. But She's Out of My League is a very formulaic rom-com movie. However, I thought this one had enough things going on in it to make it fresh and different that I've actually watched this one more than once. Now in this, Jay Baruchel plays a nerdy guy, which is the only thing he knows how to play, more or less, and he starts dating Alice Eve's character, and she, if you don't know, you've seen her and stuff, she's a 9.9. She's definitely out of his league, and it works. It was fun. He's really funny. She's good in it. TJ Miller has a really funny performance in it. It wasn't just sappy and weighed down. So this is on the list for longtime viewers that maybe need a date night movie. It's the one out of all the rom-coms on Netflix right now. It's my #1 pick. All right, I'm gonna make up for all the blood and guts I missed in the first few with Ninja Assassin, which is loaded with them. The only reason it's so far back is it's a lot of CGI blood and guts. However, a lot of action in this one, and really like over the top, crazy fight scenes. Not realistic, but it's okay because they're fun to watch. It's exciting. This is a really fun, bloody movie that isn't boring. It's not like you're just waiting for someone's head to get cut off. There's enough of a story there to keep everything moving, and then the action scenes are really great. My only downside to this one is I prefer to see real special effects. I find that so much more satisfying looking, but also more interesting than just someone at a computer sort of like playing with it. You could tell when you watch it enough to take you out of it, and I don't really appreciate that, but Ninja Assassin is badass enough to make up for it. So Sweetheart is one a lot of you have been mentioning in the comments. I watched it, I liked it, it's on the list. This is actually the second feature film from director J.D. Dillard. I liked his other movie, Slight, about a magician, like close-up magic, but there's something kind of supernatural happening. It was cool. I really dug that movie. I did feel like it was a little thin, like there should have been a little more going on in the story for a feature length, and I felt similarly about Sweetheart. I liked everything that was in it. I thought it was really well put together and everything, but I felt like there should have been a little bit more happening. I felt like there was maybe a 10-minute sequence that was missing or something like that, but that's really the only downside. I thought the music was cool. I thought the lead actress really killed it, and I feel like Dillard really put her through the ringer. She really looks like she's doing a lot of the real grunt work that she's doing, because she is a castaway on a deserted island, and there is something stalking her on the island. That's all you need to know. It's a beautiful movie. It's really well put together, like I said, and it exists somewhere between like a big budget movie like Predator and like a sci-fi channel original movie. If you like the way I'm talking about it, definitely give Sweetheart a shot. I think it's got one of the worst names of any of the movies on this list for sure, because it doesn't represent the movie. There's a lot more going on there. It's just kind of a weird name for it, but I did dig it. Hopefully a lot of you will as well. Sweet Virginia is a really good little, I almost hesitate to call it a crime thriller, because it's really not. In fact, you're gonna be disappointed going into it with that expectation. This is a fairly slow-paced movie. It stars John Bernthal, and I can't actually give away too many of the plot points because it'll really ruin ultimately what the movie's about, but it takes place in a small town in Virginia. The movie opens up with a massive crime, sort of an earth-shattering crime, and the movie, interestingly enough, is not really about the investigation and stuff, even though those elements are there. It's really about these characters that sort of cross paths, and things could go one way or another way. You're not really sure how they're gonna go, but I thought the performances were great. I like the environment of this movie. This is really the type of movie that I gravitate towards. That said, if it were maybe a little tighter and had maybe a little bit more going on in it, I would have ranked it much, much higher. That said, I liked everything that takes place in the movie. I like everything about it. I liked it so much, I just wanted more from it, if that makes sense. I think most of my longtime viewers will like and appreciate. Just expect something a little slower than like a crime thriller.
They've convicted the tobacco companies without a shred of evidence.
Another rom-com that kind of is more of a like midnight sex comedy, so I still put She's Out of My League above it on the rom-com list, is Heartbreakers. This actually stars, huge cast, Sigourney Weaver, Gene Hackman, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Jason Lee, and Ray Liotta. Everybody's great in it, and in it, Sigourney Weaver and Jennifer Love Hewitt are a mother and daughter team. They're grifters, they're gold diggers, they're trying to take advantage of rich men, and Gene Hackman plays this super wealthy guy who's clearly on his last leg. He never doesn't have a cigarette in his mouth in the movie, which is hilarious. Ray Liotta plays his typical character, but he's good at that. Sigourney Weaver is surprisingly funny in this. And yeah, there's a lot of sex jokes and stuff, but they work. It just doesn't feel hacky. It's actually surprisingly funny. Now, I have this one ranked where I have it because I just don't expect much from movies like this, and I got a lot more than I expected from Heartbreakers. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnasus, you might be familiar with. It is the last movie that Heath Ledger did before he died. It came out after his death. In fact, they didn't even finish all of the filming before he died. They had to actually write in this weird plot twist that allows other actors to play his character, and it kind of works. And I say kinda because that's the only thing really keeping this from being higher. This is directed by Terry Gilliam, who I love his work. I think he enjoys the smell of his own farts a little bit too much these days for my taste, but he directed movies like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, The Fisher King, Brazil, Time Bandits. Beautiful, beautiful filmmaker, just makes amazing, stunning stuff, and The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is no exception. Tom Waits plays the devil in this really just great role. Of course, I love Tom Waits. Heath Ledger's great, and then the way they replace him is interesting, but the movie sort of fell apart for me at that point. However, it is this really beautiful, sort of amazing journey. So if you like the other Terry Gilliam movies that I mentioned, if you want to see what Heath Ledger's career ended on, give this one a shot, but just be warned, I told you, it's weird, and it ultimately doesn't work, but it's still well worth spending your time watching if you like these weirder sort of art movie types of things. If you're a new subscriber here and you like this type of content and you want regular recommendations, I do videos like this at least once a week, so be sure to click that subscribe button and click that little bell icon so you get a notification when I put a new video up similar to this one.
Ah, see, money, jewels, pronto.
Don't look at me. What are you doing?
I was just saying, don't look at you, I'll just look at this.
Band of Robbers is a really fun indie movie about a group of guys that perform a robbery, but they're actually modern day versions of Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. Now, ultimately, I thought that that gimmick was cool. Like I liked that it was part of the movie and I appreciated it, but it also didn't do that much for the movie itself. It was just sort of like in the back of my mind while watching it. You strip that out and you still get this fun little kind of quirky heist movie. Hannibal Buress, who I think is one of the funniest guys working today in the stand-up, he's got a really great little part that he shows up throughout the movie, but it's a small part. He's funny. The entire cast is great in it, and it's fun and it's light. It feels a little bit like a Coen Brothers thing. It reminded me a little bit of like Raising Arizona or something like that. So if you love that movie and those funnier Coen Brothers movies, give this one a shot. Look Who's Back is a foreign language film about Hitler. Does not sound that exciting. However, it's about Hitler coming back to present day. He's coming from the past, it's got time travel element, and it's really Hitler. I mean, obviously, it's not really Hitler, it's an actor, but it's him sort of fish out of water. He doesn't know what to do with the modern world, and then sort of kind of figures it out a little bit, and it's really funny. It's heavy, heavy, heavy social commentary, but I thought it worked, and it was funny, and not, obviously it's irreverent, but I didn't think it was like just trying to be offensive. It had a point and was fun. Like, it's a fun watch. It's as crazy as it sounds. And typically things that crazy don't work as well as Look Who's Back does. Kidnapping Stella is another foreign language film. However, there's not a ton of dialogue in it, and I accidentally started watching it with the dubbing and no subtitles, and you can barely tell that it's dubbed because everyone's sort of whispering and talking really low. The reason they're doing that is because this movie is about a kidnapping. In fact, the first 10 minutes I think don't have any dialogue except for maybe some screaming, and it shows a kidnapping in vivid detail. In fact, I thought the movie was gonna get to be a little bit too much at one point, and it ultimately did not. It didn't get real graphic or anything, but it's very detailed on the kidnapping, how the victim is restrained, how they're keeping their identities, like very, very detailed, and it's done in a way that makes all of that stuff interesting. And then you get a little bit further into the movie and they start piling the story on. Before that, it's just process and it's interesting, but once the story comes into play, it gets very complicated, especially considering there's only a handful of characters in this movie. I thought it all played out really well. This is actually a Netflix original, a foreign Netflix original, but it doesn't rise to the top here in the US, which is why I want to tell you about it in this video. Now, my next two picks are my last two animated picks. The first one is Legend of the Guardians, which is a stunningly beautiful animated movie about these owls that like have this whole society and they have battles and armor. And it is stunning. It is easily the most beautiful movie on this list and one of the most beautiful ones I've ever seen. It's that good looking. The only reason it's not ranked really high is because it's directed by Zack Snyder, and I find Zack Snyder to be a pretty pitiful storyteller. He's known most for movies like Batman vs. Superman, Justice League. He really sort of like mangles up stories and can't just like, he just can't deliver them the way some other really skilled directors can. That said, his style is one of the most beautiful in all of his movies, and this is easily, I mean, he did movies like 300. This is easily his most stunning movie. If you've never heard of it, it's because it's not great. That said, it's still pretty freaking cool, and it's not for little kids. It's gonna scare some really little kids, but if you liked movies like Secret of NIMH when you were a kid from the 80s like me, this is a cool one to watch with maybe some older kids.
Wait, I'm a friend.
Are we alone?
No.
Now, another beautiful but dark animated movie is 9. Now, this isn't as beautiful as the Guardians movie because it was made a lot longer ago, but Tim Burton was involved with this one. You can definitely see his handprints on the design. This is this post-apocalyptic thing, which is always cool. And you got these little characters that are going on this big journey. So similar to Legend of the Guardians in a lot of ways, but this one's darker and grimmer and a little more macabre in that Tim Burton kind of Nightmare Before Christmas kind of a way. So if you're a fan of his animated movies, he didn't direct this one, but still, it's good. Like, it's this sort of fun sort of visit to a place that you've never been before. I liked it a lot just for the aesthetic and the themes that it offers, and then it's got a good enough story on top of that. Very, very watchable, especially if you enjoy the aesthetic that I'm showing you.
I think we need to talk.
No, sir. I gotta be on my way.
You best get your wits about you before you start. I want to tell you about that.
Now, I'm partial to this next pick because of where I come from. If you're new, I'm born and raised in Mississippi, and more than born and raised. I mean, I lived there most of my life by far. And Black Snake Moan has the Mississippi Delta blues vibe all over it. It's dripping with it. This was actually done by the same director who did Dolomite Is My Name. If you like that one like I did, I think Black Snake Moan is even better. It's not as fun and as happy of a movie as the Dolomite movie is. It's a little darker and sadder, but I thought really well put together. Christina Ricci looks the best she's probably ever looked in this movie, despite the fact that she's like beat up and chained to a radiator. Samuel L. Jackson plays this old man who has basically tied her up to cleanse her, and it's not as much of an assault on her as you might think. It actually works really well. Justin Timberlake has a small role in it. This is before he really broke as like a movie star, and he did a really good job in here as well. And it does deal with some heavy themes, but I like the aesthetic of it, and I like sort of how different it feels. It doesn't really feel like anything else that I'm familiar with. And then another one that still sort of reminds me of the South is Lawless. This is Prohibition era, running moonshine with Shia LaBeouf, Tom Hardy, Jessica Chastain, Guy Pearce, Jason Clarke, and Gary Oldman. Huge cast. It's rated R, so they're not pulling the punches with any of the, you know, Prohibition era violence that takes place in it. It's got some really interesting characters, including Guy Pearce as the villain. Really one of his better villains, and he makes a great villain. And he stands out here a lot more than Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman's character's a little bit in the background, but of course he's great. Tom Hardy's fantastic. You know, everybody's good in this. But anybody that's interested in that Prohibition era stuff, just even the aesthetic of that time, Lawless is a great watch. It's directed by John Hillcoat, who did The Proposition before this. But Lawless is kind of right in the middle, right where he was still making good movies, and I like it a lot for all of those reasons I just gushed about. Last documentary on the list is Amy. This is actually about Amy Winehouse, who I always liked her music, but by no means was Darren Van Dam a fanboy of Amy Winehouse. However, this documentary is really fantastic because it captures a lot of stuff. It captures this young, creative artist sort of just catching a break and just taking off. That part's interesting. So you get this music doc, which are often very, very good. This is no exception. But then you get this amazing fall, and it goes into very, very vivid detail about somebody dealing with substance abuse. And I hate to even say substance abuse problems. The substance abuse completely consumed her life in a very, very short window of time. And the documentary is very, very insightful, which sort of put it over the top. That's why it's ranked so high here. Despite the fact that I was not necessarily a fan of hers, that I don't myself struggle with substance abuse, I connected with this movie a lot, and I think it's all due to the filmmaking and how well they put this story together. Really fantastic. If you're not a big documentary person, I still strongly recommend it. It's that good.
The ropes held 1,500 years ago, and they will hold now.
Please, feel the raft.
It looks worse than it is.
All right, my last two are ones that have been on the list before, but it's been a while, and one of them I didn't talk about too much. So, Kon Tiki, I think, by its placement here on the list, one of the best hidden gems you can catch on Netflix right now. It takes a little bit time getting into it, but it's well worth it. This is the true story of Thor Heyerdahl, who crossed the Pacific with a group of guys. They crossed the Pacific on a balsa wood raft with basically no steering, sail, none of that. They managed to cross the Pacific in order to prove that the Polynesian islands were actually settled by people from South America that crossed the Pacific. Now, that's interesting enough, but what happened after this epic story occurred in real life is it really rekindled the spirit of exploration in the world. We had felt like mankind, at least like developed countries, we were at a place where we felt like we'd seen everything, we'd been everywhere, and this really rekindled that spirit. And some people credit this journey with why we went to the moon just 10-ish years later, and it was because it sort of like sparked that back up at this sort of crucial time. So I find that really interesting. In addition to that, it is just a beautiful movie, and it's this super sort of just like this masculine story. There's a scene with a shark that is just unreal, and again, just absolutely beautiful filmmaking, in addition to good performances and just this amazing source material to begin with. If you've never seen this movie, trust me, it's well worth your time.
What are you doing? Wise guy don't carry his money in a wallet. See, wise guy carries money in a roll, like this. See? Bina on the outside. Like that, come on. That mustache. You gotta get rid of that mustache.
And then the last pick on the list is Donnie Brasco. I like this recommendation. Now, it's barely a hidden gem, but it's been so long since it came out, and it never really sort of made it into sort of like the Goodfellas, Godfather territory, and deservedly so. It's a tier below that, but still really great. And with all the Irishman talk this year, Donnie Brasco is a great one for a few reasons. One is because Al Pacino's character is fantastic in this, and it's different than the other mob guys that he's played. He's playing a guy who's basically a failure and is coming to terms with it sort of at the end of his career in organized crime. And then you've got Johnny Depp playing a real guy named Donnie Brasco who was an undercover agent in the mob. That's not a twist, that's sort of given to you from the very beginning, but you get to see this incredible journey of how he infiltrates it so deep that he becomes it. It becomes a major part of his life. It is his life. He's one of these guys. And seeing that character arc is pretty fantastic. Johnny Depp kills it. He's kind of at the peak of his performance ability, I think, at this period of time, or at least getting close to it. And then you've got other good performances from people like Michael Madsen, and it's just a fun mob movie that, again, it's sort of a tier below the top shelf mob movie, but in my book, that's still pretty damn good. Let me know in the comments below which movies from this list you're most excited to watch, maybe which ones you've seen, or some other hidden gems you want to recommend. And also, help me thank the Patreon supporters. Here's everyone donating $5 and up a month. They're helping to keep things going. I've got some new ideas to get more of you interested in Patreon. Not ready to announce any of that yet, but just kind of pay attention. There's going to be some stuff I think a lot of you are going to want to jump on, and it's not going to cost very much at all coming up soon. So listen out for that. But I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this episode, and you will see me on the next one.
I'm fixing steaks for supper. I expect you to stay.